Okay, it's 10:05. Thank you everyone who is joining us on this digital workshop today. As a lot of you know, we initially had the Academy set up as a live event hosted in Irvine, California. And with everything that's been going on across the world, really, we wanted to be able to provide this value for everyone, but break it up into a way that's digestible. So this is a lot of what we would have been going over in the Academy. It might be uh, um, a little less interactive just because obviously we're not face to face, but I'm very confident that you're going to get all of the tools that you need to run a successful influencer marketing campaign. Um, to anybody that joined our influencer marketing webinar back in January, some of the information is definitely going to overlap because those strategies are still and will always be very relevant to what we're talking about. But we definitely added in some new information here and some new nuggets on how to actually manage the campaign that will definitely be of benefit to you guys. And in addition to that, we also included some resources at the end to help you track your influencer campaigns. I believe we linked up in an example agreement so that you don't have to go to your attorney to do that. And just some incredible tools to really help you launch your first campaign. So as we're getting started here today, let me go to the next slide. Sick. Hopefully it lets me go to the next slide. Nice. All right. We are your hosts. My name is Mikhail, Alfon, and I am the president and co-founder of Blue Light Media. I have with me the wonderful Karlie Myszka, who is the head of accounts here at Blue Light Media. And she also heads the strategy for all of our influencer marketing campaigns. And I truly, from the bottom of my heart, believe that she really paved the way on how to do this effectively and created the standard in influencer marketing strategy. So why don't you say hello to everyone, Karlie?
Hi, how's everyone doing this Friday morning?
Yeah, I'm super pumped on this, guys. So the agenda for today is going to be pretty straightforward. Why are we working with influencers? We're going to go through a little bit of a true and false with influencers about influencer marketing as well, too. We're also going to go into how to start planning your campaign, what assets that you need to actually launch a successful campaign, how to vet the right influencers, what the outreach process should look like, and also some campaign management and how to manage the success of it. So let's start with why influencers. Look, right now more than ever, and I hate saying more than ever because that's coming in every email that I'm getting right now, but influencers are super effective, not just in promoting the product that the product that you're working with or the brand that you're working with, but they're also effective in helping create some beautiful content. So as a lot of photography sessions are getting canceled and we're having to rethink how we're going to create original content for the brands that we're working with, we actually look to influencers to help us create those things. So the photos that you see here are actually photos that were taken by the influencer on their own. So not only are we able to get more awareness around the brand and potentially sell new product through it, but we're also streamlining our creative process by creating beautiful content by a lot of these influencers, and who are also creators in their own right. They've learned how to create beautiful content for brands and for themselves. So that's another huge advantage of this. In addition to that, working with creators and influencers really helps provide some more social proof around what your around the quality of your brand, right? And then finally, we see that the impressions that an influencer gets are usually higher quality because Instagram users or wherever you're using influencers, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever it is, those users are typically more engaged with an individual than they are with the brand. So if we can combine the two, we're really creating a great environment for people to really interact with our brands. Now, in addition to that, content is great, but we all need to make money for our brands so that we can continue to grow, right? So with our strategies, we've been able to produce an average of 3.5 return on investment per micro influencer that we're working with, which is really nice. And that's one of the things that we're going to be focusing on today, is working on micro to mid-tier influencers, as well as how to shape your entire campaign. Now, when we calculate the ROI here, we're not just looking at the fees that we're paying those influencers, we're looking at our agency fees to actually manage those campaigns as well. So our partners and our clients are actually making great money back on their influencer campaigns. And in some cases, these influencers produce up to 9 times ROI. So there's definitely a huge benefit here, not just from the content that they're creating for our brands, which is already a return on investment in itself, but also in the actual sales that they're producing. Karlie, you want to take us through that, through the true or false?
Yeah, so before we get started on how we run our campaigns, we wanted to do a fun little true or false on influencer marketing. So if you guys want to participate, it's very much appreciated. So the first question is, influencer campaigns aren't trackable. So I'll give you guys like a couple seconds if you want to chat your true or false answer.
You know, while they're thinking of the answer here, it's really interesting how a lot of brands aren't putting together the proper tracking mechanisms to actually do this. So Amy Chin says it's false. She's absolutely right.
Yeah, so this is definitely false. We'll go through how you can track each campaign depending on what type of campaign you're running. But for example, if you're running a conversions campaign, you would track it through promotional codes or UTM links. So the next one, the more followers, the better the influencer. True or false?
Ryan says false. The birthday lady says false. Martin says false.
So it's kind of a trick question in a way. So it really depends. It depends on what type of campaign you're running. For example, if you are running a brand awareness campaign, you might want to work with influencers that have more followers because they're going to have more reach. Yeah, I like Ryan's answer. Quality, not quantity. Definitely.
All influencers are false.
Okay, our next one. All influencers are frauds.
Let's see. False. Bam.
False. So yeah, unfortunately, we have seen that some influencers do purchase likes, comments, followers. However, it's not true for all influencers, and those are definitely the influencers you want to be with, and we'll go through that more a little bit later. All right, last one. This is probably my favorite question. Who is currently the highest paid celebrity influencer on Instagram?
Karlie Myszka.
I wish.
We have Kylie Jenner. We have Selena. Ooh. Wait, Selena Gomez or like Selena?
Probably Gomez, yeah, because she was. But yeah, Lynn's right. So Kylie Jenner, and it's really crazy, but she makes $1.2 million a post. So I don't know if you guys follow her at all, but I think it was yesterday or the day before, she just did her ad on BoxyCharm. And so she does that like, I think the last couple of 6 months. So yeah, just think about how much money she's making on a story. It's crazy.
Perfect. So the next thing that we're going to go through is developing your campaign strategy. And what's really important to remember is what the end goal of your strategy of the campaign is. If you run ads on Facebook or anything like that, you always set an objective for each one of the ads that you run out. And really, when you're working with influencers, you have to look at it the same way. In some respects, it is paid media because you're paying for the space, you're paying for the impressions, and you're paying for the content, right? So first think, what do I want my end result to be? Is this going to be an awareness play? Am I trying to get more engagement for my brand? Or are we looking to actually just drive sales? And just like anything else, you want to take people through kind of a purchase funnel. You want to establish some trust. You want to educate your client or your audience. And then after that, then you can ask for a sale. But typically a bad strategy is to just have somebody promote a product and then tell them to ask their audience to buy it right off the bat because they don't know it. And we've seen this a lot with like sweet tea or those workout belts or something like that, where you just see fitness influencers telling you to buy a product, but you don't really know how it's really going to work, right? So think of your strategy and what you actually want the result to come out to be at the end of it. In addition to that, you want to set your budget. You want to set the timelines. When are you going to be posting the content? How long is this campaign actually going to run for? We typically recommend about 90 days per campaign. Am I right on that, Karlie?
Especially when you're first starting out, definitely at least 3 months.
Definitely at least 3 months. You also want to be concise about the product that you're promoting as well. This is really great with new product launches, but having all of your influencers do one product at a time can be very beneficial because you're portraying the same message across different platforms, especially if some of your influencers share the same followers. You also want to outline what your main messaging points are going to be for the influencers. And you also want to check out what type of influencers you're going to be using. So when we say that, and we'll get a little bit more into this in the webinar, but when we say that, is it going to be a lifestyle influencer, a fitness influencer, a photographer? Make sure that these influencers actually fit your brand. And then finally, we want to identify what the audience demographics are. Who are we actually trying to reach? One mistake that we see very often is that brands will choose influencers solely based off of their following, but they're not actually basing it off of who's following that influencer. So what you want to do is you want to actually look in and see, does this influencer actually have the type of following that's going to resonate with my brand? So it's really important to choose the right people. And again, we're going to go into this a little bit more as we move forward. Karlie, would you like to talk about the campaign brief?
Yeah, really quickly, Ryan, your question, we will be sharing this PowerPoint at the end, so you will have it. So before you start your campaign, there are a couple assets that we like to create. The campaign brief being the first thing. So the campaign brief is basically what you're going to send the influencer, and it's going to outline your brand story, anything you want them to know about your brand, whether it's a mission or a vision, the product descriptions, or if it's a service, your service description, so they know exactly what you want them to talk about when they do their posting. Messaging and tagging, so making sure that they're tagging the right accounts, they're using the right hashtags. We also recommend including posting do's and don'ts. This can either be around the messaging or it can be around the photos if you want them in the photos, if you don't want any other brands in the photos, that sort of thing. And then we also recommend including visual examples at the end. That way there's no miscommunication. And you'll also get an example of what our campaign brief looks like too.
Right. So in this deck, you can click on that hyperlink and you'll get an example of it. So that's a great resource for everyone. Yeah, the next part is the influencer kit. So we've found that it's very beneficial to actually create a kit for the influencers that you're going to be working with, regardless of whether or not they're a macro influencer or a micro influencer, right? And the reason being is because you want to create an experience for these people and you want to help them create content around your brand. So if they can do an unboxing, for example, on Instagram stories, it's going to be a lot more exciting than just one photo with your product. In addition to that, we have to understand that these influencers are also partners with our brand. So we want to make them feel special, right? Imagine onboarding a new employee to your brand. You're probably going to give them some swag. You're going to go through what the company culture is like, and you have really a great opportunity to do that with a small influencer kit. One of the little hacks that we found is just including a personalized handwritten note from the founder. These types of things really go a long way, and it makes the influencer feel as if they're part of your brand, not just somebody that's spitting out some content for you.
So the next thing that we put together is a campaign tracker, and this document is what you're going to use to track each influencer, where they're at within the outreach process, their deliverables, and all of that good stuff. So again, you'll get a link to this that you can use. We have a template for you guys. Basically, it goes through the campaign outline, so what we went through in the strategy slide. So you're going to want to outline all of those details, and then it's going to have each influencer status, so the progress of prospects and contracted influencers, payment terms and payment status. This is super helpful for your accounting team when they know when to pay the influencers. And then the influencer stats. So this is super important, and it's going to be really easy at the end of your campaign if you do it as your stats come in for each post. And then at the end of the campaign, you'll easily be able to see the success.
And then finally, maybe not finally, but definitely you want to have an agreement put together with your influencer, even if you're just doing it off of doing your content off of trade. And the reason being is a couple reasons. One of them is it definitely gives your influencer the idea that you're actually a legitimate company and that you're looking for a proper partnership. In addition to that, it's also setting some guidelines and outlining some of the terms of the partnership. For example, one of the things that you can include in the partnership is that you're going to be using the content on other campaigns, whether it's an advertising campaign, print media, or whatever it is. So making sure that you're very clear on what the expectations are, what the terms of the partnership is something that's really going to go a long way in the future. And what's really great is we have a very small percentage of influencers that actually don't end up posting. And what I mean by that is we're reaching out to literally hundreds of creators on a quarterly basis. And maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 of those actually don't post. And we really believe that that's because of the fact that we're putting together an official agreement from them that's coming from the brand. So the actual production rate is actually really high for us. And by just making sure that you're doing your due diligence, we'll make sure that you're getting the content that you need, that you're getting the awareness that you need. And I believe that we also included a boilerplate agreement that you can start to work off of in this webinar as well too. So make sure that you have an agreement of some sort, no matter if you're paying somebody $1,000 or if you're just doing some sort of trade.
Cool. So now that you have all your assets together, you're going to want to choose the right influencers. So a couple of things that we take a look at when we're vetting our influencers, the first one being engagement. So not only is it important that they have a good engagement rate, which typically is between 2 to 3%, depending on how many followers they have. If they're a micro influencer, they'll probably have more like a 10 to 20% engagement. But also something you want to take a look at is the authenticity of those engagements. So again, making sure that the influencer didn't buy any likes or comments. The second one being followers. So again, you want to make sure that the followers are authentic. And a simple way to do that is by looking at their likes comment ratio, or you can use a third-party checker. We included a resource at the end of this deck. The next one is going to be audience demographics. This is super important because you could see an influencer and just by basically scrolling through their profile, it might look like they're going to be a great fit. But then when you dive a little deeper and look at their audience demographics and you see that their audience is 90% male and you're a female skewed brand, that might not be an influencer that you want to work with. So definitely take a look at those audience demographics when you do your research. Another one is past partnerships. So take a look at the past sponsored posts that they've done. Not only is it important to see if they've worked with any competing brands, I would recommend working with an influencer. Say they've posted with a competitor, I would recommend waiting like 2 or 3 months before working with them, just because when an influencer kind of goes back to back working with competing brands, it doesn't really look like they're a loyal customer. Something else that you want to look at is how well those sponsored posts do, because if they're getting a ton of engagement on their organic posts, but then they're only getting half the engagement on sponsored posts, that might not be someone you want to work with. And then lastly is the content. You just want to make sure that the content is in line with your brand, that they're talking about subjects that you talk about and you believe in the same things.
It's really important to understand when to use macro influencers versus when to use micro influencers. So earlier we talked about the idea that the more followers, the better. And we mentioned that it depends. And it really just depends on the goal of your overall campaign. So if you are doing a brand awareness campaign and you're looking to reach as many people as possible, yeah, a micro influencer is going to work a lot better for you than a micro influencer because they're reaching a lot more people. So typically macro influencers have about 200,000 or more followers. And of course that varies. Like you can consider a macro influencer to have 100,000 as well too, but that's really where that big following comes into play. And again, make sure that you're looking at the engagement here, how many views they're getting on their videos, how many likes and comments that they're getting, to make sure that these followers are actually real if you don't have a tool to check that on your own. If you're looking for more engagement, you might want to use micro to mid-tier influencers, right? So engagement is going to be based off of people actually liking posts, doing comments, things like this. And a lot of your messaging in that engagement phase of your campaign is going to be based off of education on your product or your brand. So micro to mid-tier are going to be here. We found that the smaller the following, or sometimes smaller followings or mid-tier followings actually have a higher engagement rate than some of those macro influencers, and more of their followers are actually authentic. And then finally, we can look at the conversion campaigns. Again, we want to use micro to mid-tier influencers here because they typically have better engagement, and they're typically and their audience is typically the type that's going to be a little bit more receptive to click a link in the bio, to swipe up on an Instagram story, whatever the case may be. So here you definitely want to use some personalized promo codes. You want to make sure that all your tracking set up so that you can actually see what your conversion rate is here. But when you are looking for conversions or sales, we've typically found that micro to mid-tier influencers work best here, depending on your budget. If you can't afford Kylie Jenner, I'm sure she can push some product if it's the right product for her. But you know, in case you don't have $1.2 million to promote a post and you have like $50 to $100 per post, you know, a micro to mid-tier influencer is probably going to be your best bet here.
Cool. So now that you know who you want to reach out to, now is how you reach out to them. So we found that the best way of reaching out to influencers is directly through the platform on direct messages. Of course, if in their profile it says don't DM them, obviously don't DM them. But we found that the best and easiest way to get a hold of them is through direct message, because that's where they're most online. So when you are DMing them, we recommend doing a personalized message. So use their name, relate to something that they've recently talked about. Just make it more personal rather than just a bot message, you know. And then once they're confirmed they're interested, you want to move the conversation over to email. And this is where it gets a little bit more professional, and where you're going to reiterate why you're contacting them, provide the influencer brief you created, list out the requested deliverables so they know exactly what the collaboration is going to be. And then also either provide a compensation that you're comfortable with, or you can ask for their media kit and prices, and then negotiate from there.
So Karlie, I have a question here. Do you recommend reaching out from the brand page or from a personal page?
Actually, I would recommend from a brand page, just because then they get to know the brand that they're going to be potentially working with, and then they can check out the feed. But if you're finding that you're not really getting a lot of responses from a brand page, definitely try from your personal one too, because they might be more likely to click on that message if it's coming from a person. So I would test both.
Cool. And one thing that I want to point out here too, I know that it seems kind of silly to, or maybe what's the word? Tedious to create a personal message for each one of the influencers that you're reaching out to. But one of the challenges that you might run into when you're reaching out to 100 or 50 influencers at a time is getting them to actually respond to you. So crafting a personalized message will help that response rate quite a bit, and we highly recommend actually personalizing each one of these messages. So don't cut and paste a generic thing, get their name in there. Talk a little bit, as Karlie said, talk a little bit about the content that they produce so that they know it's coming from a human being and not just a bot.
Really quick, Mick, we have a question from Kathy. She has to leave. Will we be sending this deck out in the replay of the video?
Yeah, we're going to send a replay of the video and the deck as well too.
Cool. And then Lindsay, your question about how to pay influencers, we'll go through that right now, actually.
Perfect. So the influencer rates here, these are just general. Each influencer is going to have kind of their own rates. And we've run into situations where somebody with like 500 followers, for example, is going to charge a couple $100 for a post, right? But this is a general guideline that's been provided by Hootsuite on what you can expect to pay influencers. So you'll obviously, as you see, it's going up by the amount of influencers that they have. And a general rule of thumb here is that influencers will charge $100 per 10,000 followers that they have. And as far as actually paying the influencers, I'm just going to jump into this one if you don't mind, Karlie. I was feeling the flow. As far as actually paying the influencers, there's a couple ways to do it. We typically don't recommend doing Venmo or anything like that. If you're a marketer or if you're an agency working for a brand, I would really leave that up to the brand to pay them through whatever account they have, so that you're relieving that pressure off of you to do all the documentation. Because even, once you get to, as you know, once you get past $600 for a post or something like that, then you have to start sending out W-9s, so on and so forth. So what I would ask is that each one of your influencers are actually sending you an invoice, and then you pay through PayPal, Zelle, or anything else that's actually trackable. We don't typically recommend Venmo, and that's just kind of from a business operational point. But there's some other ways, there's other ways to pay your influencers or to compensate your influencers that just aren't based off of a flat fee. For example, you can definitely do trades or sponsorships of products. So if you're a fitness brand, you can offer to supply this influencers with 6 months worth of protein and pre-workout. There's also a trial period that you can try as well too. And instead of paying the influencer to promote, try a test period. And after you can actually gauge how well the influencer actually works for you, then you can set up some sort of compensation plan. The other thing that we're a big fan of is actually commissions and turning these influencers into ambassadors. And typically we do this if we see that influencers are working really well. We'll shift them from a flat fee to a commission or ambassador type of program, so that they're getting paid off of all of the products that they're selling. This is really nice. I'm a sales guy at heart, so being able to pay someone based off of performance rather than just the idea of posting content is something that I think is very effective, and it's going to entice the influencers to promote a little bit more and talk about this in a more passionate way, because they know that they're getting paid off of each product that they sell. And then finally, there's a tiered approach. And if you find influencers that are working well for you, having a tiered approach is something that can be really effective. And for example, you can do something like, if an influencer sells 10 products, then they get X commission within 30 days, right? Or if they sell 50 products within 30 days, they get a higher commission rate. And again, this is just another way to incentivize the influencers to continue selling your product. And a lot of times they might work outside of scope for this type of thing, which is really nice, because you definitely want them to promote your product and to post about your product or brand more than just the 1 or 2 times that you might outline in your campaign brief.
Cool. So now the next step is going to be activation. So when the influencer accepts the proposed terms, you want to provide them with that contract that you created. And then you want to add them as a business partner, either on Facebook or Instagram. We recommend adding them as a partner because it's going to be easier to see their stats. I'm sure you guys have seen influencers post and it says paid partnership with X brand at the top above like their location. So when you activate them as a brand or a business partner, you can go into Facebook analytics and you can actually see all the engagement, the reach, impressions, all of that for the post. And then the next step is going to be preparing that branded kit and shipping it out to the influencer using this really cute dog.
Is that an essential worker?
Yeah.
Perfect. And next we're going to go into campaign management. So now you've set up your brand, your guidelines for the campaign, you've vetted the right influencers, you've set up your budget and your compensation terms, you've activated your campaign. Now what do you do? So in order to accurately measure the success of your campaign, you need to consistently utilize and update the influencer tracker. And this is definitely going to help not just you, but also your client or the brand that you're working for. Just making sure that you're up to date on payments, that you're up to date on all of the posts that were supposed to go out on your brand's behalf. In addition to that, you can also follow up with the influencer once the kits are delivered. So if you're using that cute UPS dog, you might have a tracking code that is going to notify you once it's delivered. You can follow up with the influencer and make sure that they're going to be posting on time. In addition to that, what we typically do is we have all the influencers create the content first and deliver it to us so that we can approve on what they have actually created on our behalf. And the reason being is because we want to make sure that the content is up to par in terms of quality, so we can use it in campaigns later on down the road. But we also want to make sure that the information that they're putting forth for the brand is actually accurate. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're following the payment terms just as they're posting on time for you. Make sure that you pay your influencers on time as well. That's going to be good for your relationship with the influencer. But in addition to that, they have a ton of followers that you definitely want to make sure that you're in good light with, so you don't want any bad press on your end. And then finally, once all of the posts have been published, you want to request all the metrics from your campaign and from those posts as well.
Really quickly touching on the payment terms as well, what we mostly do is 50% upfront, 50% at the end.
Yes, that's a really good point.
Cool. So measuring the success of your campaign. So again, you want to utilize that branded content feature or adding them as a business partner. And then that can be found in your insights through Facebook, through businessfacebook.com. So what we like to do is review those metrics at the 24-hour mark, 72-hour mark, 1 week mark, and 1 month mark. And that's because of Instagram's algorithm. People can see posts 3 weeks later. So those engagements can be boosted within those times. And you want the most up-to-date, accurate information. And then lastly, you want to measure the success of the influencer's post by using the correct metrics that we were mentioning before, whether it's a conversion campaign, you want to take a look at the promo codes, brand awareness, you want to take a look at the reach, and so on.
Perfect. And we're going to dive a little bit into kind of the nitty-gritty of measuring the success of any campaign. So one of the KPIs that we measure is the cost per engagement. The average cost per engagement is 25 cents to 75 cents per post. And the way that you measure this is the likes plus comment divided by the cost of working with that influencer. In addition to that, we also look at the cost per click, which is the cost of the influencer divided by the clicks, and then the cost per 1,000 impressions. And the average cost here is about $5. So you want to take the cost, multiply that by 1,000, and then divide it by their impressions.
Cool. So these are some examples from our past campaigns. So for brand awareness, you want to look at the reach and the impressions, and that's how you're going to calculate your CPM. And then for engagement, you want to take a look at the likes and the comments divided by the reach, and then you'll get your engagement rate. And then for conversions, so this is an example of a campaign that we ran. This influencer specifically was product exchange only. So she had 41 orders, and we're actually working with her again, and she's still killing it. So this is just your e-com platform where you would take a look at the coupon.
Yeah, so just to reiterate again, you don't necessarily have to pay these influencers a ton of money to get good results out of it. By getting into the audience demographics, by looking at their engagement and understanding what you actually want to be communicated on behalf of your brand, you can produce amazing results. So making $2,000 off of one product exchange is definitely no joke. And then Karlie, do you know how many followers this influencer had?
Ooh, it was definitely above 10,000. I know, because she had to swipe up. I'd have to double check on that one.
It wasn't like 50,000 or anything like that, was it?
It is 29 or 30,000.
30,000. That's pretty good. Off of a trade as well. So that's another part. It's like, she didn't need 100,000 followers to sell any product. We're just trading the product. So we didn't have to pay her, even though she has a big following. And then she's doing pretty good on the conversion side of it. So overall, that's a successful partnership there. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this of this workshop, you want to treat your influencer campaigns very similarly as you would your Facebook ad campaigns or anything like that. And you want to optimize for sales. So you're starting with the awareness and you move them down the funnel, and then you start to realize that some of the influencers are working better than the other influencers. So really what we recommend there is to discontinue your partnerships with the influencers that aren't producing the results that you're looking for, and then finding new ones to fill up that gap, and continuing to find the ones that are really working for you. And then once you find the ones that are really working for you, incentivize them a little bit more. They're obviously moving the needle for your brand, so you want to make sure that you take care of them and that they're excited to work with you campaign after campaign. So again, test product specific campaigns versus store-wide campaigns. You want to use dedicated landing pages for the campaigns instead of just driving traffic to a generic product page. This works really well. It's because the messaging is going to be a little bit more specific. So just to dive a little bit deeper into that, if you're promoting, if you're just promoting your protein product, instead of having them go to the page on your general website, have them go to a landing page that gives them more information on that. Maybe it has some of the photos and testimonials there, just as you would on an advertising campaign or a Facebook ads campaign, and you'll probably see better conversion rates from that. And then what you can do too is you can actually run ads through the influencer's account to that same dedicated landing page. And this works really well because now not only is your brand being promoted, but when somebody actually sees that content, it's actually coming from a human being. So again, many times audiences are more likely to engage with an individual than they are to engage with the actual brand itself. So if you can get the permissions to run ads through the influencers campaign, that's a huge plus. And so next, we just wanted to go through some of these case studies before we go into the Q&A here. And really, we've just found that a lot of these campaigns work. One that we've been talking about a lot is Wing CBD. You'll see this photo pop up on the blue light feeds and in our emails because this was just such a beautiful photo that one of these influencers created for us. And this is something that we're using on their campaigns, our campaigns. So it's really beneficial to look at the type of content that the influencer is making instead of just looking at their follower base or their engagement base. But right here, I mean, we activated 50 influencers and set up landing pages for them. And for them, we've reached a 3.3x return on agency and influencer fees for more than 4 consecutive months. And in fact, this case study is actually a little dated. And I think that the progress of this campaign has actually improved quite a bit. We also ran a campaign with Grit Cycle, which is an indoor cycling studio in Southern California. And what we did here is we actually used the content from the instructors and used that content in our Facebook ads. And once we used the actual user-generated content from the influencers and even some of the customers, the click-through rate of the ad improved by 300%. And that's just kind of a testament to how much better user-generated content can work as opposed to like campaign type of photography. And then in addition to that, the return on ad spend, once we started using the content from their instructors and from their customers, went from 0.8% up to 4.2 return on ad spend. So in this specific scenario, we use the instructors as the influencers for Grit Cycle. And now we'd love to open it up for Q&A. I'll definitely want to open up this box for Q&A here, but mine's not opening up. So can you read them off?
Yeah, I can. So Arturo asked, how many influencers do you recommend for a startup to promote to be effective, but also being cost efficient? So for this one, it really depends on what you're comfortable with for a budget. And then from there, you can outline how many influencers. Typically for like a smaller brand that's just starting out, we like to at least see a $3,000 budget per campaign. And per campaign, that's usually about 3 months. And with that, we can usually get anywhere from 20 to 50 influencers, depending on how many followers they have and how willing they are for product exchange and how much they charge. Um, let's see. Likes versus comments. Obviously, they each represent a different level of engagement by the individual. Likes being faster and more reflective, comments possibly being more engaged. When considering the value of an influencer's overall engagement, how do you rank the number of comments versus likes that their content receives? Mick?
I was responding to the webinar chat. Can you repeat the question?
No worries. Um, so likes versus comments, they each represent a different level of engagement by the individual, likes being faster and more reflective, comments possibly being more engaged. When considering the value of an influencer's overall engagement, how do you rank the number of comments versus likes that their content receives?
Yeah, so that's kind of a challenging question to ask because it's going to depend on what that person is putting in the caption itself, right? So what I would look at is not just the number of the comments that they're getting, but what type of comments that they're getting. So are people actually asking about the product? Are they asking on where they can purchase it or what the results are? So when I'm looking at that, it's that same thing of quality versus quantity, right? I don't really care if somebody's getting 100 comments on something. I want to see what the level of intent is there. So if I'm measuring it, I will always look at the comments and consider the valuable comments like questions, inquiries, so on and so forth, to be much more relevant than the amount of likes. Likes are pretty easy to replicate and really pretty easy to buy. So definitely look at those, look at the comments and see how strong they actually are to measure that level of success, especially in your engagement phase and the conversion phase of your campaigns.
Cool. Yeah, great answer. And then Kelly asked, if you choose to pay an influencer via commission or ambassador approach, what is your advice on determining how much to pay them per sale? So when you start an ambassador program, I would first, if you haven't run an influencer campaign, I would first recommend doing a brand awareness campaign. That way you can test out what type of influencers work best with your brand. And then from there, when you give them a personalized promo code, you can see who has the most sales. And then from there, I would start an ambassador program and reach out to those who are more sales driven. But to answer your question, how much to pay them per sale? I believe we do anywhere from like 10 to 15%. Mick?
Yeah, 10 to 15% is generally accepted from the influencers. But again, that's going to depend. That's going to depend a lot on what your actual profit margin is on that product, right? So if you're only working on a 10 to 15% profit margin, you don't necessarily want to whatchamacallit, to give away that much of the commissions. What you can do instead is set up a flat fee, or you can set up a benchmark, right? So depending on what your profit margin is on your actual product, gauge it off that. 10 to 15% is good. But if you don't have a huge profit margin, maybe say something along the lines of, if you sell 5 products, you'll get $50. If you sell, 20 products, you'll get $150, whatever the case may be there. But that's going to depend very much on what your actual profit margin is. And if you're working with, if you're an agency working for a brand, or you're a freelancer working for a brand, you definitely have to have that conversation with the brand that you're working with and allow that transparency so that you can recommend the best commission for those influencers.
Cool. Did anyone else? Oh, never mind. Working with Blue Light, would you find the influencers my brand needs, or would I still need to find the influencers? So working with us, we handle all of it from start to finish. So we do the strategy, we do the outreach, we do the management, we do the review and analytics. And then we do also the next steps, whether that's putting together an ambassador program or continuing on with another campaign. So yeah, we handle all of it.
Yeah, and even with creating the swag for your influencer kits, for example, we've set up some great partnerships with people who can create T-shirts, water bottles, chargers, any sort of brand merchandising, and really handle that campaign end to end, so that you don't have to worry about it. And if you are interested in doing that, feel free to send an email to Karlie@bluelight.media, and we'll set up an appointment to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. Thank you for the inquiry there.
Yeah, thank you. And then also the only thing that we don't do is shipping out the actual kits. That's one thing that we ask that the brand does, as well as paying the invoices directly from the brand.
Perfect, yeah. John Garcia asks, I'm an artist, and to maximize engagement, would it be wise to get another artist?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think collaborations with like-minded brands or artists in this case is really great way to reach new audiences and yeah, just keep building on your brand and social proof.
Yeah, I think that's really important to point out. Like the collaborations are definitely key. In the beginning of this presentation, we had a picture of Lil Wayne with, I believe, I don't know who the second guy was. I can't think of who the second guy was now. But anyways, my point is this. If we look at what hip hop artists have done, they're always collaborating with other people with features on their tracks. And that's to just share their audiences and gain more awareness for the person that's either doing the hook or doing a verse in their thing. So like the hip hop artists really laid out the groundwork of what influencer marketing actually is. And if we look at how these rap stars and things like that actually promote their own brands, it's actually a really great blueprint onto how you can actually promote your brand by doing those collaborations. Ren Ramirez asks, if I'm trying to promote a song with influencers, what is the best way to track the results? Maybe multiple Bitly links. Yeah, I think multiple Bitly links will work. Multiple Bitly links will definitely work. The other thing that you can do is you can create a UTM tracking code, right? Depending on like the analytics that you have set up. So a UTM tracking code, you can just Google UTM creator, and it's going to give you a really easy tool, and you can actually name out who's promoting that link, and you'll get the data on each individual person. I'm not 100% sure if Bitly allows you to create a unique link for multiple people for the same destination.
We also included that resource in this deck too. It's on the last slide. So
Are there any other questions there, Karlie?
I don't see anything else.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, guys, for joining this webinar. I hope you found it valuable. We definitely enjoyed doing it for you. We did include some resources here to anybody that signed up for the webinar. You're going to get this deck. You're also going to get a template for a campaign tracker. You're also going to get the guidelines for a campaign brief, and you're also going to get a template for a contract as well too. So we're doing a lot of the legwork for you here. In addition to that, you'll also find some free influencer metric tools like how to get the follower authenticity, the bulk engagement tool, a money calculator, other ways to get Instagram analytics. And as Karlie said, we did include the URL builder, and then also a CPM calculator. So you're going to have all of these resources for you to start launching your campaign. And again, if you have any questions about launching your campaign, you can find us on Instagram, bluelight _OC. And ask us any questions there. You can send us an email, Karlie@bluelight.media or Mikhail@bluelight.media. And we're happy to answer any questions that you need. We'll definitely be sending this out, so you can also reply back to the email, but don't feel like that the support ends here. Feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we're happy to answer any questions about your influencer campaigns. I hope you guys have a great day, and yeah, stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I don't know if we're still broadcasting. If you're all still here, I don't know if we're still broadcasting.